I'm Ravi Mhatre with Lightspeed Ventures. I'm going to ask each of the panelists in a moment to give a brief introduction of who they are and the company that they're with. But just to set a brief context, you've heard a lot through the day about different aspects of social game development and creation. And there are a number of different formats. It's not monolithic by any means. We've got asynchronous games that appear to have emerged within the social media platforms like Facebook, and they leverage social graphs and messaging within social platforms to create engagement. They're the more traditional MMOs that are standalone portals often that have a casual or a social theme. They create a strong sense of community, get engagement there. There are also games we've heard about that are developed by the users, or content that's developed by the users within a sort of more general framework that can create engagement. So a number of different types of social games that exist. And so now we want to talk about monetization and explore how you can create a business or wrap a business around these different types of social gaming models. And what's being employed, what's working today. There's still, I would say, a lot of experimentation. It's not one size fits all, and I don't think, we'll hear from the panelists, there's a silver bullet. And as a comparison point, example of the traditional model, Grand Theft Auto, which many of you probably know, it's a console game sold at retail. In 1 week, first week after launch, it sold $500 million worth of revenue. So the traditional model is pretty obvious. You don't give the consumer anything until they pay for the product, and then they get a lot of it. And with Web 2.0 and the internet, social games and social media, the model is about providing a significant experience for free to the user, and the company presumably in return gets audience acquisition and engagement. However, the users are now trained to have a high expectation of getting lots of things before ever thinking about reaching for their wallet. And given that as the background, I'd love to hear from each of the panelists a brief introduction on who you are, the company that you're with, and maybe just spend a couple of minutes saying, here's the primary monetization model we're thinking about, or we're planning to use, or we do use, given that the fundamental initial offering is a free-to-play service. So, David?
Hi, I'm David Perry. I'm one of the old-school video game developers. I've been making games for about 25 years. The last one I did on console was a typical $20 million project. And so, for me, I've built my own company. Atari bought it. I should really have checked out and kind of stopped doing this, but it's like the Wild West for me. There's always something every year. Year 24 comes along, year 25, year 26. There's always something fascinating. And for me, right now, this is the place. This is where it's really interesting. I got an opportunity to co-found Acclaim. Acclaim used to be a very well-known video game company. And what we did is we bought the name and the URL, and we started it and bet the whole thing on free-to-play and the future of multiplayer. No more single-player games for us. And that's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Mattias Miksche. I'm CEO of Stardoll. I'm heading an 8 million strong army of pink 10 to 16-year-old girls. We're a girl website around the 3 Fs, fame, fashion, and friends. Stardoll is part virtual world, part social network, part online game. It's a global website phenomenon grown to 8 million uniques in 2 years. And on Stardoll, you really make your own online avatar, but we call it Me-doll, and you buy virtual goods, clothes, furniture, pets, etc. for that doll and that avatar. So that's our primary business model. Since we now attracted a pretty nice audience in a couple of markets, we also have a secondary business model, which is advertising. So we have a nice advertising side in Europe and in the US as well.
I'm Matt Mihaly. Unlike the other gentlemen on this panel, my company is pre-revenue, pre-customers. The reason I'm on the panel, I suspect, is because I ran a company previously called Iron Realms Entertainment, which was a niche publisher and developer of text mods, a very hardcore type of MMO, predecessors to EverQuest and World of Warcraft and that kind of thing. And while there, we pioneered the virtual asset sales model back in '97 and used that very successfully, producing ARPU's, average revenue per user monthly, of $50 and up. And with Sparkplay, we raised money from some venture capital fellows a couple months ago, and are looking to take the same kind of model and apply our expertise into the kind of more mass market graphical space.
My name is Jameson. I'm the CEO of Mochi Media, and we have a platform to help game developers do two things: make money from their games and distribute their games. It's very simple, and I used to be a game developer, from Flash games to a game for Nintendo to casual downloadable games, and we saw a lot of pains within the game development community, and probably much of the reason why people are here today is to figure out how to make money from their games. And one of the things that we started off with was to serve independent game developers. And for a lot of these guys, it's starting as a hobby, it grows into a nice side business, and what we're seeing now is it's becoming a very, very profitable business for these guys. And it's, I think same reason and same sort of entrepreneurial spirit exists with game developers as it does with the people that you see out here in this space. And with us, our primary monetization model is advertising. We go out and we sell the ad space within the games that our technology provides and powers as these games spread across the web. We are reaching about 60 million people a month right now through the games that are within our network. So it's something that we have great reach, and we're trying to help a lot of independent game developers.
So I'm going to start with maybe just sort of an obvious question to kick it off. But basically, everyone's chosen at some level here to have a free-to-play initial model. Why do that instead of the traditional model? You find a way to charge some amount of money to everybody who comes, and then if it's 1 million people, even if you're only getting a little bit of money from everyone, you can build up revenues quickly. So why not have a subscription or some model for trying to charge every player who comes to the platform? Why be free as the way to go out to market?
It seems to work really well for Google. The idea that they can give things away for free, but if you want to advertise with them, if you've got hardly any money, you can still advertise with Google. If you have lots of money, you're welcome to give them lots of money, and they'll happily take it. And that's really the way we look at it too. Is in the console world, there's this kind of wall. I call it the money wall. It just keeps rising every new cycle that we go through. They put another layer of bricks on top, and all the gamers have to climb over because the machines get more expensive and the games get more expensive. And so this to me is just a way more honest business model, because at the end of the day, if they don't love your game, they don't give you any money at all. They come and play for free and suck up your bandwidth, right? So it's very important that you are committed to making really high-quality games. And if you do, and they start paying, then it turns into a wonderful model. So you are actually taking more risk, I think, initially. But at the end of the day, we're making more money. We average about $75 per player that actually starts paying money to us, in which case, for us, that's better than the normal sort of retail model by miles. And so we're very, very happy with the monetization that we're able to get out of the system. So ultimately, that's really, I think, a key point. The second point is just the idea of free versus paid. I come from paid, so I totally get that. On the other hand, the idea that if anyone ever does something really good that's free, like your Grand Theft Auto example, imagine someone, could be Asian, could be Western, could be from Europe, we don't know where. If someone comes out with Grand Theft Auto or something just even similar, slightly
if it was free, they wouldn't have made $500 million in the first place.
They would in microtransactions. Because if you look at a game like, Halo is actually a great example of that massive amount of revenue. We, in our games, which are Asian imported games, we've had people peak out at $3,000 in microtransactions. Can you imagine how much Halo would have got? There would be people spending $10,000 on one title because they just fall in love with it. And so that's something that, actually, I think you would be surprised how much they would make if they were released for free.
I think another reason to go, to go free is, and I agree with everything David had to say, but there's when you put a pay barrier in front of people when they have to whip out their credit card or their wallet, you need an incentive for them to do so. And so, in the case of boxed games, GTA succeeds because they had $100 million to spend on creating a really flashy, awesome game, and it's a well-known brand. And I think without that IP, or or whether it's a sequel or new IP that's a movie or whatnot, I think it's hard to get people to climb over that barrier. It requires a lot of marketing dollars to do so. And if you're developing a free-to-play game, you're able to do a soft launch that doesn't require the big capital outlay for upfront development as well as a big splashy marketing launch. You don't have to get all your customers on day one the way that something like World of Warcraft does, where they need to see a big spike right away in order to start bringing back their investment.
So I come from a background which is totally web, which is totally free. So all this, all you folks out there, who know exactly about downloads and RPU on that, I know nothing about that. We're just trying to build the best product we can, and we knew that when we started out, if we did that for this audience, which in our case was young girls, they were totally starved. They were totally underserved with good entertainment on the web. But we just knew that if we did a good product enough, we could charge money for it. So, for us, the freemium model is really just it's a tactic, it's a marketing tactic. But at the same time, we've always charged from day one. We've always said, this is for free, but this is pay. And I think a lot of people, are missing out on that right now, trying to grab market share, giving everything away for free, having, points or coins, whatever it might be, hoping that one day, they can make the magic switch and have people start paying. That, I think, is hard. Building up a big site with big users and then trying to figure out what they're willing to pay for. I don't think that works. I think you got to have a free component, but from day one, you got to have something, that people are willing to pay for. At least you got to find that thing. Otherwise, you'll be nowhere, even if you have big user numbers.
So it sounds like, that's sort of the key. Free can allow you to reach new audiences that maybe, they're not hardcore enthusiasts, whoever we're going to pay, so you expand the market. Can allow you to, be in the market and compete against probably more well-capitalized big companies that aren't going to give away the content for free initially. So as an individual developer or a startup, you can actually get to market. But it sounds like the other observation is you've got to, from day one, think about what are the ways that if I offer something for free to get audience, I'm still going to be able to make a business. And I mean, I'd love to hear. In
our case, the community also adds value to the overall social, the environment. If Stardoll would only be for the paying users, it'd be dull. It'd be much boring. Only the rich kids would have fun.
So the free people actually make the experience better for the people who are willing to pay. If you give them something interesting to do. Well, what works best? I think we've heard fundamentally three categories of ways to try to create a business. You can have a lot of people in the environment and people who want a better experience. There's some way to provide them a premium subscription or service level, micropayments or digital items. Another way to provide sort of merchandising within the game to everyone, and then there's advertising. If you get people in the environment, you can sort of show them images or show them videos, other things. How do you guys think about what are those? What are the pros and cons of each of those? What works well? Does it depend on the kind of game, the kind of engagement, the genre? Just throw that out there. Do people have different opinions on what's the best?
I think. Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, I think it absolutely depends on the kind of game. If you look at something like Halo, I'm not sure. I mean, I think that you would sell a lot of digital items in Halo, but you're also going to alienate a lot of players because it's meant to be a very balanced, tactical game. If you imagine chess, for example, would chess be fun if you could buy another pawn? And I'm a huge fan of digital items, but there are certain kinds of games where you can sell the goalpost, and that's not fun.
Yeah, you definitely can't let them sort of buy I've heard of this. Some of the Asian games, they'll sell you the bullets, and that's a little dodgy. So having it so I can buy a warthog and come driving in and kill you, and you can afford one is not cool. So you wouldn't be able to do that. But usually the things that we see are people want to save time, or they want to level up faster, which is important to them, and it doesn't really matter to you that he's leveling up a little faster, or it's a vanity thing that they just want to look the coolest in the group, or they want to communicate better, or they want to travel around servers freely, and there's all kinds of other things you can do without. The minute you touch the balance, it's a problem. We definitely don't go near the balance because they would have a cow.
Right, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
In our case, microtransactions and advertising go perfectly well together because microtransactions is what drives our business. But we will never have 100% of our users that are willing to pay for the game experience. So advertising is a fantastic way to monetize the other X% of your user base. In our case, we're lucky enough that the gameplay itself on Stardoll, which is dressing and pimping your apartment, etc., is really made for brands. Our users actually craving for brands, interacting with brands, displaying their personality, through brands or through different clothes. So, we're lucky in that way. But I think it really depends on what kind of game you have. If it's suitable more for microtransactions, subscriptions, or advertising.
Yeah, I knew we would be talking about this topic. It's obviously a big part of monetization, but I decided to research it. So I went online to see how many models there are, because those are the three core ones to us. But I looked online, and there's a major casual game site, and they listed 8. And I went through their 8, and one of those was actually wrong because they said the cell phone market. I'm like, but that's a platform. It's not a way to make money. But I kept researching it and looked into the history of the game industry and all the different tricks that people have used over the last 25 years to make money. It turns out there's 22 different business models. And so when you start your project, you have 22 different choices.
Can you post that on your blog after the session for our audience?
So yeah, if anyone wants the list, just email me, dp@acclaim.com. I'll happily send it to you. But I think that ultimately is what's interesting is there's 22 doors open to you when you start making a game and designing it. But you can also start crossing them over, like microtransactions and in-game advertising. We've noticed our revenue dropping on in-game advertising, so we're having a problem there. So we're actually now using in-game advertising to push people into buying premium items that will turn off the advertising, and that actually has boosted our item sales dramatically. So it's ultimately right now this, as far as microtransactions versus advertising versus subscriptions, it really is your own rules to make up as you go along.
And we see an evolution. So I think advertising is the easiest form of monetization to get started with, and what we've seen is people start with that. They get to a certain level of popularity, of fame, of sort of capitalization, and then they move on, or then they tack on something else. They'll start selling it. They'll start licensing the game. They move into different areas, and if it gets big enough, then obviously they have greater resources to move into areas like microtransactions and more advanced sort of.
I completely disagree. I think it's much easier to start with microtransactions. Because if you have 5 users and one of them are, you can test out if one of them are willing to pay. Whereas in advertising, it's such a binary model. You really got to go up to a huge reach before you can attract any advertisers.
Well, I think it also depends on the developer. The developers we work with they're independent. They're usually 1 or 2 man shops, and it's a very sort of time-intensive process to build a microtransaction system on your own. Whereas for these people, it's simple to build a game. It's a lot of people out here are building Facebook apps or building sort of the social games, and to get started, you just want some monetary incentive, and that's why they're using advertising. And then they're getting more into deeper sort of the microtransactions areas. And
but how much money can you make? I'm curious from advertising. So you're an individual developer. You build a Flash game, or you build something that you can plug into Facebook through the API. I mean, is it like AdSense on a blog where you can make $100 a month? Is that really a way that you can make a business, or what have you seen?
Yeah, we have almost hundreds of people making over $100 a month.
Hundreds of people making over hundreds of dollars. So it's still early.
So it's still very early, right? Yeah. We see the space is very similar to when bloggers started appearing. It started off as a passion, started off as a hobby. Nobody's making any money. But eventually, as the space started to evolve and greater sort of monetization sort of channels started to appear, then people were actually starting to make livings. I think this is we've been doing this for about a year now, so it's still an early business, and we'll continue to see it evolve.
We found that the secret to this is to get the credit card out of the wallet. Once they pull it out, they can't stop spending. So to try to get them over that hump of pulling the credit card out, we now. Our new policy is if you buy any virtual item at all, even if it's 10 cents from us, we'll turn the advertising off and you become a VIP within the system. The reason being, we know that after you've bought that first item, you're going to get on a roll. They always do. In fact, we don't even sell small enough money increments to let you just buy one item. So you have to give us $5 minimum, which means we've got $5 of credit in the system. So ultimately, that's worked really good for us. So we're actually a little abusive with the advertising, and then that gets us $5. If you think about it, that's kind of crazy, but it works.
Make advertising the stick.
We're also doing another test, which is optional in-game advertising. So you can turn it off at any time, like literally any moment. Just go in, check a box, and the advertising turns on or off. If you turn it on, we level you up faster, which is incredibly valuable to these gamers. They want to save time. They want to level up faster. Because they chose to turn it on, which 96% of people choose to turn the advertising on, we hit them much harder. We hit them with 30% more ads than we normally do. So we actually increase revenue without pissing anybody off because it's completely optional.
They ask for it.
So there's ways to play with advertising versus, if you really honestly can't afford to buy items, no problem. Just go with our advertising. And that way we can monetize every single user that plays one of our games.
So what about the metrics? If you're developing a game, I mean, what's the benefit of the experience of the panel here on what you should look for? How many players out of a sample of a million or 1,000 or 100,000 should you expect will actually get their credit cards out and pay? And how much should you realistically think you're going to get from a user who's willing to pay?
We get 10%.
So 10% of all users who are playing the game, you should expect to pay.
And they'll pay for 3 months, and they average per month $25 a month. And after that, God bless them if they stick around and give us any more. But that's generally what we expect.
How does that compare to the average lifetime of players? So do you find that players are playing past the 3 months? Have they run out of things to buy, or did they just drop out at that point?
There's some people that just play endlessly, and I had someone contact me, and that's when I was saying about the $3,000. They didn't think I would believe them, so they're like, "Can I send you my PayPal receipts to show you?" And, I'm like, "How can you spend that much money?" And they buy things and they give them to other people, and they just play abusively with the amount of time they have. I don't know. It's crazy. So it's something we're happy to help them do, and if anything, our biggest problem is the cost of finding someone who will pull a credit card out. That costs us around $30 a player, so it costs us $30 to get 75, right? So we need to work really hard. This is where we actually kind of suck right now, is trying to learn from this kind of group is how to get them to invite their friends, because every friend is it's free, right? And
what do you mean it costs you $30?
Because we buy a lot of players, and only 10% actually, we buy our players through advertising, and only 10% actually give us cash back. So that gets quite expensive. So ultimately, if we can increase the virality, getting them to invite their friends, what we found is when someone invites a friend, they spend 1 second thinking about, who do I know that would like a game like this? And the person they choose actually does like one of these games, and so the chance of that guy pulling his credit card out is way higher than someone that we just acquired online. So we love when people do that. We really need to understand how to do that a lot better.
What about Stardolls?
I mean,
Metrics
$25, I'm not going to say what we have, but $25 a month sounds fantastic. I mean, in our case, our users are young. Our users are 9 to 16. So for them, it's either if they're really young, it's the mom and dad that pays. If they're a little older, still mom and dad pays, but it's really part of their allowance. And that's a much, much harder value proposition, to be honest. It's easier to get a younger user to monetize because it's really not paid by them. They don't make the purchase decision. But to get a savvy, cool 14 or 15-year-old to pay, it's fantastic if you do it because it really means they love your product. It's theirs. They don't go to mom and dad and ask for money, but they have to take it out of their spending limit that month.
Budget.
It's a pretty scarce budget. So for us, we look at levels of what kids in this age group have on their hands. So for us, it's a part of the monthly allowance. So our for $5-6 or euros a month, you can have a lot of fun on Stardoll. That's kind of our target.
What we're finding is that the way the users spend the money, the game. We thought that we would make all our money from MMO RPGs, like hardcore people buying hardcore stuff and lots of armor and everything else. And the game that actually generates the most per user is our dancing game. And the reason is because people actually are spending time dancing and they really care how they look, and they buy a ridiculous amount of items. I mean, nearly everyone ends up buying items because they want to look good. And the secret to that game, this was a game we found in Asia, so we're not claiming, we did not design this game. It's a great idea, but which is one big problem I see with a lot of these online, we all come together and I need to make friends, and it's all a bit cold in the room, and I'm not sure who to talk to, and it's just not the most friendly environment because a lot of people are just getting on with what they're doing. So you're new to this, you just logged in. The game which we got, the dance game, what happens is they come up with the idea of a humiliation mode. And what happens is if you do girls versus boys and the girls win, what we end up doing is we spin a wheel and it's got funny costumes on it, like panda costumes and things like that, and the losers have to wear the panda costumes. And it breaks the ice immediately. In the whole room, everyone's laughing, LOL, and all the rest of it, and suddenly you've made everyone start communicating, and it's amazing. That was such a clever idea, and it's the kind of thing that again, makes people go, I want to stick around in this game, and it starts to grow.
I just want to echo what Dave's saying, is that really, whether you're doing subscriptions or advertising or digital item sales, you have to get the person to stick around. You have to create that context where they value the context, because without that, if they don't value the context you've created, then you can't sell them anything. There's no reason for them to buy, for them to stick around. So in one sense, all the models, you have to do the same thing in one sense for all the models.
Exactly.
And Jameson, I mean, it'd be interesting to get your comments. I know it's more of an ad-based model. Do you think about metrics in terms of how many CPMs a player can generate on average, or how many impressions and what the average CPM is? So how a game developer should be thinking about per user what advertising can generate in terms of the value of that user?
Yeah, for us, metrics is everything. I mean, we've started our business on the foundation of metrics, and it's, before we entered this space, nobody really understood the power of distributed gaming. And, in the past, people would create this sort of walled garden experience where you build a game, you have to come to my destination to play it. And what we're seeing, and it's becoming very popular, is sort of distributed gaming. And Addicting Games has been, a very sort of powerful destination for that. They've aggregated games from all over the web, and then you see them spreading all over the place. And now, we track over 30,000 different sites where these games are being played on, and it's continuing to proliferate. And there's such huge fragmentation. People don't realize that these games may be on thousands of sites, but they go to one destination. They think that's the only place they can get it. And for these developers, they're starting to realize the power of distributing their games, because that generates higher page views, higher usage, and which aggregated with the CPMs, then it helps them out tremendously.
Can you share what kind of CPM ranges one might expect as a game developer if they can integrate in an ad network like Mochi?
Well, that's very hard to answer, because these games are it depends on where the game is being played. If you're getting a 100% audience in the US, then you're going to get much better sort of CPMs. But if you're getting 90% of your traffic coming from China, I don't know anybody out here that's sort of monetizing ad traffic from China. So it's probably not going to do very well, but it varies. It's all over the board. Within the US, we're probably seeing $5 to $10 CPMs. But outside of the US, it's very much a crapshoot.
You guys have talked about it a little bit, but I'd be interested, panel has a view on customer acquisition strategies. Is the view, given that the initial experience is free to play, that you should really rely mostly on viral or social audience acquisition techniques that are essentially free, or can you realistically afford to spend money to acquire users, given that there's going to be a cost for every user? You're going to lose money for that user initially, given that they're free, and then hopefully make it up on the back end of those few that convert. How does that work? Can you really spend money on users, or should you, is free to play really mean you better have a social viral conduit to get most of your users into the system?
No, you can definitely pay to acquire customers. It's, as Dave said, they're paying $30 for a $75 spend. We had maybe $50 for like a $600 spend at Iron Realms. you know, it's just like any other customer acquisition. If you get them to spend more than you pay to get them in, it's worth doing.
Yeah, it's just a balancing act. That's it. We just gotta, you know, the more. What we then do is we do a lot of analytics to try and see how we can just keep improving the numbers. Again, using proper viral techniques, something that we are starting to really understand finally, and that's we're showing growth now as far as trying to get those costs down as far as acquisition goes. But without question, the things that we're thinking about more are what can we give a gamer that they really care about. We've tried saying here, would you like $3 or whatever, and the gamer doesn't care about the $3. But if we give them an item in the game that only inviters get, and that item is like some amazing horse that they can ride around on, it's visual, which means other people in the game can see and go, where the hell did you get that from? That's worth a lot of money. And they go, I invited a friend. Well, suddenly we've got another guy going, well, I'll invite a friend for one of those. And so that's the kind of stuff we're using. Again, that actually costs us nothing, the virtual item we give them, but as long as we make it exclusive and valuable and visual, it becomes something that will help sort of bring down our acquisition costs.
Yeah, just like everyone else. I mean, marketing is math. It's simple. So,
Yeah.
you know, however the metrics work out, if we can buy cheap traffic and monetize that, we'll do it. But you know, basically our site Stardoll as a phenomenon is a a viral freemium site. So we really depend on the virality of the free product to spread, and so far it's worked out.
And same metrics, about 10% of your users who can you share with that as the same kind of ratio in terms of paying users to free users?
I think in the overall in this space, 10%, 10% is very good. You know, maybe someone has gotten up to 15. I don't know. You know, as I said before, you know, I'm not a download game person, but on the web, you know, web-based casual games like that, you know, I think 10% is great.
There's two major bleed points. One is registering. We see a lot of people stop the minute we say, will you please register, and give them a whole bunch of...
That means give us your credit card?
Yeah, and capture, no credit card, but, you know, just all the stuff, the captcha and the information, and are we going to spam you for the rest of your life and all that. That's the way they perceive it, and they see that and they go, gah, I don't know if I can be bothered with that. And so we have a hole there that we lose a bunch of people. We also then go, hey, here, would you like to download this 1 gigabyte file, or in some of our games now, 2 gigabyte file? And, you know, a lot of them click start, but a lot of them go, I'm done. I'm not going to wait an hour and a half for this to arrive. And so they get very impatient. So that whole download cycle is a real pain. And then we've been pulling, now we have all our analytics. Now we're shocked to see how many people download a gigabyte successfully. We know we get a completion from the code that says they got it, but they never actually install it. And we assume that's because now they have to go and they've got some, you know, NVIDIA driver problem or something like that, or whatever. It's just they never actually go through that. So we've got 3 bleed points there, and if we can tighten those up, like not making you register before you play, like let you register once you need to register, like there's something to lose, or if we can make our game entirely in Flash and just get away from the 2 gigabyte download, that's the kind of stuff that ultimately we would get a lot more people through our funnel if we were able to achieve that, and that's the kind of stuff that we're investing into heavily right now.
Yeah, I would say a big part of our success is, you know, we're one-click dressing. You know, Jeff Bezos invented one-click shopping. I think we invented one-click dressing. You come to the site, click, bam, you know, start playing. Really, for our users, especially young girls, that's
got to be instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
And you know, if you look at some of the biggest free-to-play properties out there, RuneScape, Habbo, Club Penguin, you know, they're all very low barrier to entry games. You can jump right in, and that's, you know, it is important. It's a huge advantage.
It's also important you make it easy to pay. So we have about 60 different ways you can pay us, and we will, you know, if there's another 100, we'll add the next 100, right? So any way people can get cash to us, we will happily accept it. And it's also a bit of a secret, is you can ask those guys, the people who collect money in foreign countries, you can say to them, which games are you collecting the most money from? And they, for whatever reason, they will tell you. So you can very quickly work out which are the best games to bring to the U.S. and or which ones are most likely to monetize.
I think that's an especially valid point, being here, because I think most Americans think that once you have credit card and PayPal, that's probably it.
No, it's no good at all.
It's no good at all. For us, just having the option of a local, simple payment method is half of the success in succeeding in payment.
Can you talk a little more about that? What are they? You said there are many tens of payment methods. I mean, what other payment methods are there that you would...
we have scratch cards. We have prepaid cards at Target and Walmart. We have, IVR telephone numbers. We have, we have another service where you can send it in cash. We have premium SMS, which is, absolutely huge in Europe, especially in our demographic, and catching on big in the US as well, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, one of the mistakes we've made is actually letting them choose how they pay us. That was kind of dumb because some of the companies charge you really high rates. So why don't we try to steer them to the one that we want them to use, and then give them special bonuses. So they're about to pay by SMS, and we go, hold on, have you seen that PayPal's giving a large bonus right now if you use that instead? So. Because we're giving away virtual currency, that doesn't cost us anything, blah, blah, blah. So you get the point.
But you can only do that to a certain degree. I mean, in our target group, for example, in a lot of our users, their only way of paying is SMS.
Absolutely. If there's no choice, we'll take it. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But realize that, they're not the same to us if you pay with SMS.
Huge differences in transaction costs.
And do you have to build all of the infrastructure if you want to use those different payment services? Are there third parties that you can say, help me with collections or with putting a variety of payment services on my site?
Yeah,
how does that work?
You only need a few, and you're off to the races. Like pay by cash, click and buy. PayPal is obviously very big. But if you go,
there's an 80-20 of a few vendors who at least can get started.
Yeah, we'll give you a list of logos this long of things that you suddenly accept.
And then there's also guys that are aggregating some of the aggregators together, like PlaySpan and Two Fish is going to add that, is going to start becoming a payment aggregator. And so there's the aggregators of the aggregators.
Exactly. It's awesome.
And what about fraud? If you're collecting money from these different payment services, will they handle issues with various forms of payment fraud? Is that something you have to, again, have a skill set around if you're going to just start as a game developer and you want to start making money from micropayments and so forth?
Anti-fraud is very important when you're selling digital goods in particular, because there's no cap on what someone can spend. And so someone could run 30 transactions in a month on a credit card. The credit card companies penalize you based on the percentage of transactions that are fraud as opposed to the percentage dollar amount that's fraud. So one guy running, $35 transactions, you multiply that by 1,000 guys, and you could have a big problem potentially. Mm-hmm. You can get blacklisted by the card companies, huge fees, and you have no recourse against when someone purchases a digital item. There's no recourse against a chargeback from a credit card company because you haven't collected a signature anywhere. All they have to say is wasn't me, and they have 6 months to do that after they purchase the item. So whether it's buyer's remorse or a parent whose kid stole their card. You maintain that liability for 6 months, essentially, on credit card transactions.
What we do, since all of our users are kids, and we don't want to alienate, parents, nor do we want a kid to spend, $1,000 on our site. We just have simple limits per account, per credit card, per payment method per month, so that stuff doesn't happen. On the fraud side, we see Stardoll and Stardollars. It's not a virtual world where you can take in and out money. Stardoll is it's an entertainment destination site. Once you made that transaction, you can take it out. And if you have a system like that, you automatically get rid of 98% of the fraud, because most of those people are just trying to scam the system, getting money back out again. If you have a system that doesn't allow that, then you're fine.
That's the secret. Just don't let the money come back out. Yeah. We don't mind you trying to put money in. And we just decided from the get-go our policy would be if there was a problem, we would just give the money back and not question it. So we're not going to get into arguments with our gamers. So that's worked for us to date. We just haven't really had that big a problem.
Okay, one more question, and then we're going to have a brief amount of time for audience questions. But I'd love it if each of you could sort of call out one online free-to-play gaming site that you think has done a great job with a model for building up a business or monetization on the back end. And you can't pick your own company, other than your own company.
Habbo. I think Habbo's done a fantastic job. They have the number of payment methods they enable per country is superb. Actually, I'd love to see Habbo spin off their billing unit and license it to the developers because it's so good.
I was at Gaia. They've done a phenomenal job. It's just amazing to see how rabid a fan base they have, and to grow it from just, very organically to the point where they are now. It's really amazing.
I would say Maple Story, but I wish they could get rid of the download. So Maple Story without the download would just be awesome.
Our dear Scandinavian competitors, Habbo. I mean, they've done this for like 10 years. Yeah. They really built this whole category. We all deserve, should thank them.
Well, excellent. And with that, I'd like to open it up. If there are questions from the audience for our panel, please stand up and ask your questions.
There you go.
Sir?
So, I'm just wondering.
There's a mic.
It's coming right now. Yeah, front row.
I guess this is a question for Mattias mainly. How detailed of a translation are you making between CPM on advertising and ARPU on virtual items? Like, are you making a calculation where you can, like, say, set the value of virtual items based on what you would be getting in advertising if you were?
That's a very good question. We probably should. We haven't.
Okay. Is anyone else making that? I don't know. Matt, did you do that?
No, we haven't actually. Okay. We didn't run ads at all in Iron Realms. Frankly, our items were very expensive. They started at $20 and went up to about $1,000, and so we kind of felt like running ads might be a little bit over the top.
Right.
The gentleman in the back.
That's how much you charge?
Yeah, Iron Realms. We had players dropping $10,000 at a pop sometimes. Oh God, it's insanely profitable. Niche company though.
When you accept ads, do you have a preference between display ads on a CPM basis, AdWords perhaps on a CPC basis, and the affiliate networks where you get paid on a CPA basis? Do you manage that in any way, or do you just exclude certain types? I'd be really interested in knowing those things.
We're currently, we've been trying different things. The thing that we found is that getting a click is obviously very important to the advertisers. So we're currently testing in one of our games called Nine Dragons. There's a bar at the top of the screen, and we just put a big ad there. It's like a banner ad, and it's one of the things that turns off if you buy anything. But it's clickable, and that's a bit of an innovation to have. Think about this as a downloadable game. This is a downloadable full-size game with clickable live advertising built into it, and so that is something that's working really well for us. So that ultimately, I think, has turned out to be a pretty good decision because it's also driven up the item sales at the same time.
In our case, it depends on what kind of advertiser it is. If it's a movie studio that wants to advertise a movie for short term on the site, it's a pretty traditional, simple eCPM. In our case, we have standard formats, which is good for most advertisers and the media buyers. Then we can do a lot of nice things within the game Flash file itself, so we can give a lot of fantastic interaction and drive down the eCPM. It's more trickier for our fashion brands that are on the site because there, you can really get into the details of who should be paying whom, which revenue split, production cost, what have you. We have a virtual fashion mall, for example, and the companies that are in there are paying us money, obviously, to be there because it's a branding, value to be there. But then again, we are charging, star dollars for each and every clothes. Should they then have part of that, or should they pay like a rental to be in our virtual mall? It's pretty complicated. So in that case, in order to build the market and build, we just say basically, one price over a set of time where we guarantee X number of, interactions, including production, one price. And then, it was very good when we sat down and negotiated with one of these fashion brands, and we said, we can do this business model where you pay us per this, or we can do that. And they said, honestly, we're full of positioning and pricing and everything in the real world. we don't want to care about that in the virtual world as well. It's enough complicated having different price points and stuff in the real world. So I think they see us, basically as a brand advertising place.
This was one other thing that we did was the way most of the microtransaction games work is you start off a bit lame, and then you slowly sort of buy things and make yourself look cool. And it's very common you start out with blue jeans and a white T-shirt, and that's it. There's no sort of what you want. It's just you're stuck with the standard stuff. And we did do a test with AT&T. They paid us, a sizable amount of money to buy out the game. And we thought to ourselves, will that really piss the players off if we put an AT&T T-shirt on each new player? And we tried it. And, it's the kind of thing that you'd think that they would go, oh, this is horrible, this is so abusive. You don't hear a single thing. It is the weirdest. Sometimes I just wonder, So we did it. It worked great. We got paid. They wear their T-shirts. So sometimes you have to, even if it goes against your instinct, it's worth just trying it, just a little test, just see what happens, and it actually might work out for you.
Hello, I'm Lex with Spirit Change. I have a question about virtual currencies. A lot of these applications and games have virtual currencies that they manage. Do you have any tips for how to prevent things like currency inflation? Obviously, you're giving away a lot of credits when people sign up, and over time, how do you keep that scarcity or that value associated with that currency?
It comes down to kind of game balance. You need to balance your faucets into the system and your drains out of the system. And it's an ongoing problem, and it requires ongoing attention as well. Every time you introduce a new way to create that virtual currency, you risk throwing that balance off and causing what used to be called mudflation. And it's just it just requires constant attention.
Yeah, it's definitely very important to keep track on. We keep track on it on a daily basis. See how much how much money is created and how much is spent. Fortunately for us, our users love the stuff that we create, so they spend it in a second. But keeping track of that so you don't have that inflation is super important.
One thing to think about is actually making your items more expensive. We got in a lot of arguments over the pricing of items. Like we would put in a certain item at $20, and we'd go like, that's just crazy. That's not a microtransaction anymore. That's bullshit. We're getting these big arguments over it. And at the end of the day, you can always go down in price, right? You can't go up. You can't decide, oh, we charge too little and we got to start charging more and more. That'll really upset them. So if something is $20, but today it's only 10, or the next day it's only 5 because there's a big double special, it's the Father's Day special, you can do that. And so then you can have seasonal. It's kind of like retail. It's really, this is where we can learn from retail. Is there's the price for the suit. And then there's today's price for the suit, and people respond to that. So we can cause a spike in sales absolutely anytime we want to.
I mean, for us as well, we have collectibles on the site. We have things that are limited edition that we pull out of official circulation, so they become collectibles. And our users can trade peer-to-peer, so the prices go up. But for us, we can never charge $50 for a virtual T-shirt to a 9-year-old girl. It just doesn't work. So there's a social responsibility element to that.
Yes.
Well, also, I don't think your 9-year-olds have $50 to spend probably as well, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. We tracked our users who pay the most, and not surprisingly, they're in London and New York, Manhattan.
Yeah.
Jameson mentioned he's able to drive $5 to $10 CPMs. Just curious to know if that's a gross CPM and if there's a rev share associated with that with the developer and what that rev share might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our whole business is predicated on sharing the revenue with the developers, and we give a 50-50 split. So but that's a gross CPM, and then the developers get half of that. And if we could, we'd give way more. The more developers get, the better, because that incentivizes people to create more games, better games. In the sort of year that we've been doing this, we've seen a tremendous increase in the quality and the level of gamers that have been entering the system. We started first with just independents. Now we're seeing companies like Digital Chocolate, Large Animal, really great companies that have been in the gaming space doing great things and stepping it up. So it's, we're continuing to see the evolution of the space.
It's also, I signed up for your service just before the show, and you also pay, which I thought was just fantastic, you also pay the person who owns the blog who's running the Flash game, and you make it really easy. I like that a lot. So I put one of my blogs just to test your system. It worked great. I mean, it was painless. And I like the fact that you can do that, you know, that anyone can post one of your games and make money without having had to be involved in the content making whatsoever. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're trying to proliferate content development and content sort of distribution, and this is just a means to do it. I think we're going to see more and more people doing this.
Good. Well, we'll have to defer to our organizer MC. One last question.
One last question.
We're going to let you guys head out to the cocktail reception.
So a lot of the folks here have got some prepaid cards that are usually bought at retail, as part of attending the conference. I'd love to hear from Mattias and David and anyone else who could comment how important that is as a monetization channel for you guys.
Retail?
Prepaid cards at retail. How important is that?
I think prepaid cards is the future of the business. If you think about it, console games are sold on media. We know that Sony and Microsoft are going to, either in the next console or the one after, are going to remove all media, so they will just be digital distribution boxes. The problem is that they can't get retail to stock those boxes because there's no margin for the retailer, so the retailer makes their money from the games. If the games are all digitally distributed, then why would I stock PlayStation 5 or 4? Which basically means prepaid cards. There's going to have to be some way that the retailer can participate. And that hasn't been worked out yet, so I haven't seen any of this yet, but it's kind of obvious. So ultimately, we love prepaid cards. So Acclaim is now in Target and 7-Eleven and all the Rite Aid stores. And so for us, it's been great. But I would love to see it. You know, someone was going to introduce me to how to get it into all the grocery stores. We want to get in the grocery stores too, because it's a parental kind of place. That's great. But ultimately, I think the prepaid cards are whoever owns a prepaid card business, prepare for when the consoles switch over to digital only. It's going to be a great time for that.
I completely agree on your analysis. Right now, for us, it's one out of many payment methods. But it's an important one for us in the U.S. especially because it's a way for the kids to get money in their hand to be transferred digitally online. In Europe, really everyone uses SMS. It's part of your monthly allowance that your parents fill up your monthly prepaid card. But in the U.S., if you can't get your mom or dad to whip out the credit card, it's very hard to get Stardoll or credit on Stardoll. So it's a way of really exchanging hard cash to digital cash. So in that case, it's important for us.
It just goes back to making it as easy as possible for players to give you money. I mean, we've had players mail us literally like 50 cents in an envelope that must have cost them $1.10 to send. Because they don't have credit cards. We didn't do SMS. They just want to give you money, make it as easy as possible.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone for being on the
Thank you.